Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Glorious face in the abode of the gods of knowledge, fall down before him, and the cherubim utter blessings. And as they rise up, there is a divine small voice and loud praise. There is a divine small voice as they fold their wings. The cherubim bless the image of the throne chariot above the firmament, and they praise the majesty of the fiery firmament beneath the seat of his glory. And between the turning wheels, angels of holiness come and go, as it were a fiery vision of the most holy spirits. And about them flow seemingly rivulets of fire like gleaming bronze, a radiance of many gorgeous colors, marvelous pigments, magnificently mingled. The spirits of the living God move perpetually with the glory of his wonderful chariot. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I hope that life finds all of you blessed and of good health and well being. It seems like we are continuing on with the insanity of all the coronavirus and all the hype that is being perpetuated and escalating with it. I'm joined again by Rob Skiba, and we will continue our introspection of the chapter by chapter, verse by verse examination of the Book of Enoch. Rob, are you there, brother?
I am here and doing well, Zen. How are you?
Good, man. I'm doing well as well, and we now are in official lockdown mode here, and they are
Mhm.
threatening to pass out $1,500 fines and put
Wow.
people in jail if they catch you out on the road for any other reason. Well, I mean, still you can go to the doctor and go for groceries or go for food, but they don't want many people to gather in groups of over nine, I believe is what they said last. But how about where you are? How are things in Texas?
Well, as far as my normal daily routine, nothing has changed.
Uh,
Like, for me, I do have an office and I go there whenever I have meetings with people or if I'm, doing something that requires me to be off site from my house. But I haven't been there because they've had several cases in the building. And so everybody's kind of freaking out over there. So, I work from home most of the time, and in the afternoon, I go to the post office and mail out any packages that need to be mailed. I go to Sprouts, I pick up some food, and I come home.
uh-huh.
That's pretty much my daily routine. Although I have augmented that routine by making some fairly regular visits to Home Depot lately. We are working on the whole gardening thing. I did
Yeah,
a
that's
show.
awesome.
Yeah, I did a show last night with Justin Best from Christian Truthers YouTube channel.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you've seen his channel yet. He's got another channel called Sabbath Gardens. And, he's just got like 4 or 5 videos up there right now so far. But what I love about his channel is he's a newbie at it, and I'm a newbie at it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, I mean, there are lots of great, great gardening channels out there. And they have hundreds of videos. But it's like, okay, I just want to, like, ABC, start from scratch 101.
Right.
you know?
Right.
And he's sort of taken it upon himself to be that guy. Like, okay, I'm ABC 101 guy. And he even shows you, like, the receipts from Lowe's or wherever he goes shopping. This is
Yeah.
what you need to build a raised bed or whatever. And so it's been very helpful. We barely scratched the surface in the show that we did last night because the most part, the first half of it or so, we're really getting to know him and hearing his testimony and whatnot. But, as usual, it becomes a multi-part series. Uh, but yeah, man, it's been really exciting to see like how seeds work. Like
Yeah.
I can't even explain it. Like I'm having a new relationship or renewed relationship or a new kind of relationship, whatever you want to say, with the creator right now as we are in the germinating seed stage. We've been doing 7 days ago, so a week ago today. We started these little starter kits. You got these. They're almost like egg crate containers,
Right.
and you just put the seed in there, and make sure you keep it watered. And I'm amazed at like how quickly some of these seeds just start to sprout, and like beans, like they'll get to a good 3-4 inches in a week.
Right.
And it's just what's amazing to me, and there'd be a whole study just in this alone, is like I want to know God's reasoning for the sizes of the seeds. Like relatively small plants have sometimes big seeds and sometimes really big plants. I mean, just take an apple tree. Cut open an apple and look at how big the seed is. And it's like how he packs the information that he packs into each variety of plant, into the seeds and the various sizes of the seeds. It's got to be a study there somewhere. I'm just looking at it going, man, I mean, look how small this seed is and look how big that plant gets. And, geez. So I don't know, man. Maybe I don't know. It's a whole new world for me. And I'm really connecting with the creator doing it. So
that's awesome.
It's been pretty exciting.
Yeah. I as far as skill set, there's, in my mind, nothing greater than being able to utilize the earth and the seeds and the things that the Creator has provided for us to bring forth food to sustain ourselves, and to use the land and the dirt, and to come to understand even the different crops that work together, that work in harmony and that help to sustain each other, as far as the ground cover, and then giving something for it to climb and to grow. And I mean, yeah, there's the whole science and technique to all of that. And that's something that I always had wanted to do. And so that's really awesome. As far as you beginning your journey, now is definitely the time with the beginning of spring. And I think everybody should utilize, each growing season, and to learn how to do that, to even grow crops and bring forth, even if you're just going to do a few things, a few herbs or whatever. But so what are you trying to grow?
Well, right now everything's a big experiment. So
yeah.
You go to Sprouts or Home Depot or wherever you buy seeds, and I'm kind of like, okay, 2 of this, 2 of that, 2 of this, 1 of that, 1 of 3. I'm gonna, I grab a little bit of everything, and mostly stuff that I would buy, to eat as far as vegetables go, and salads and that sort of thing. So things that I would buy, and we don't have a very big yard, and I mean, it's a decent size, but only one corner of it actually gets a fair amount of sun. The rest is in the shade, and so it's utilizing the space and doing the research. I had Sheila create a spreadsheet for, okay, look up each of these, like how deep do the roots go for this plant? How much sun does this plant need? Does this plant grow up or does it grow down? And put that all in a spreadsheet. How much sun does it need? And then I'll go figure out where it needs to go in the yard. And hydroponics is a whole other neat thing too. Right. So we're doing some experiments with that. Like there's a body armor light is a sort of a energy drink. Well, I don't even say energy, more like electrolytes and stuff, but it doesn't have all the usual crap that some of the Gatorade and stuff have. And so the bottle, what is it, 16 fluid ounce bottle. The way it's shaped, the top has sort of a teardrop shape to it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to cut the top of it off and then flip it upside down with the cap on and drill some holes in the cap for roots, and then put just a little bit of soil on that top part, put seeds in there, and then fill it up with water. And, I'll just put it in different places where the sun is and see what happens, And I mean, it's like just add water, man. The stuff grows, and it's like way cool. Check it out.
Yeah, good soil, good water, and that's all you need.
And worms, that's something that we didn't get to in the show that I did last night with Justin, but after we got off the air, we talked about it some, because I had these large like Rubbermaid bins, and I'm looking at these bins. I'm going, geez, these would make great raised beds, without having to build anything.
Right.
And so, like, the area by the fence has a little bit of a slope to it, so I wanted to level it off so the bins sit right up against the fence, flat. And so, I didn't really till the ground. That one area, I did till it a little bit just to level it. And in the process of doing that, I wasn't even thinking. I mean, I'm hacking and digging, and ended up cutting an earthworm, a pretty large one too. And I felt like horrible. I just felt like, oh man, I don't know how much they feel pain, or I don't know. I was just like, God, please, heal this thing or take away its pain. I didn't have it in me to kill it, but I didn't know if I already did kill it. It's still moving, but I'm like, But I'm looking at the thing. I'm like, wow, because we have mostly clay here as far as our ground. It's more clay,
right?
And I was amazed at like how much life is like an inch down. I mean, underneath the grass. And so I started talking to Justin about it. He's like, yeah, you can get like 1,000 worms for like $30 or something crazy, and you put them in a closed container with like 2 inches of soil in there, and you use it that like your compost. Like if you eat a banana or something, put a banana peel in there. He said you'll be amazed at how quickly these things reproduce and start composting stuff and leaving behind like a worm shell. I don't know what you call it, kind of shedding like a snake, I guess. And and that stuff's like mega rich,
right,
for your soil. And he was saying it's like the back to Eden or something Eden is the technique. And he's like, all you do is you lay down cardboard on top of your grass. You don't even dig up anything. You just lay down cardboard on top of your grass. And then you put down, various things, peat moss and planting soil and like cow manure compost on top of it, and you wet it down real good. And that's it. And then you plant your stuff and you put bark mulch on top. So the bark mulch apparently shields what's underneath from the sun. So the sun doesn't, bake everything, and the UV lights or whatever doesn't mess with it, but it also retains moisture. And he's like, the cardboard will eventually break down. But in the meantime, it's going to kill the grass underneath it and any weeds that might be there. And so, it's a fresh bed. And once that breaks down, he's like, you're going to have a whole ecosystem because, all the bugs and stuff underground that do what they do are going to do their thing. And, man, it's just amazing. Like I'm only like, a week into this, and Sheila and I both, and we started sprouting too. And that's really cool too. You get these little bins that kind of drain water through them, and you just put seeds in there, and like within 2 days you can eat it.
Right.
And it's just like this little garden of sprouts that are like
high energy.
Yeah, nutrient dense. Like it's just awesome, man.
That's great, man. That is awesome.
And I'm not watching the news. I'm not watching it. Like, I'm a happy guy. Like, I look at 1 second of the news, I'm already depressed. I'm like, I'm not watching that crap.
Right.
I mean, it's like they got a ticker tape.
Yeah.
They got like this ticker tape. 2 more dead. And it's going up. It's like, if they did that for like motorcycle and car wrecks or heart disease or like anything, you'd never do anything.
Right.
But we gotta have a ticker going for this one.
Yeah, and I do keep hoping we'll turn the corner, but I'm like you. I'm not keeping an eye or allowing it to consume my whole day. I've been just enjoying the spring and being outside and being able to read a lot of the different books that I read, and so I'm really enjoying the weather, and my life, like yours, is quiet and peaceful. I hang out with my cats. They go in and out with me, and we're just really enjoying the time and the space. It's pretty the same thing for me. Just
speaking
really
of reading,
peaceful.
Kevin Stoll, one of our moderators here, he sent me, I don't know if it was after last week's show or whenever it was, when you were talking about the Book of Lamech of Cain.
Right, yeah.
He sent me the Amazon link. It just came in. I just got the book. I haven't read it yet.
Right on. Yeah.
But Yeah, it's a really short, very skinny little book, but
Right. Right.
definitely looking forward to checking it out. Looks like
Hmm.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like to try to read everything and to keep up with kind of what's being released. And I know that, this guy has access to the Vatican archives and seems to be releasing more and more. And so, it's at least of interest to keep up with. But I know the guy Brent Landau, the one that wrote the Revelation of the Magi about
Yeah.
the children of Seth. He just recently released a book with an individual called the New Testament Apocrypha,
Mm.
and it's released some newer texts that are associated to the New Testament and that are apocryphal books, which have not been published or released into print previously, and so that's some interesting material to examine as well.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just nice, that there are new things coming out because, again, for those that really like to stick to the King James and the study of the canonical, the authorized text, in Yahushua's time, there was no canon. That was several hundred
Hmm.
years
Yeah.
later. They were studying and reading
Everything.
everything exactly, and so
This book of Lamech, though, it's kind of like the Book of Giants or whatever.
right.
It's got a lot of dot 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 parentheticals,
Yes.
like where apparently there's you got to fill in the blanks kind of thing.
Fragmented.
Fragmented. It makes it difficult to read sometimes because kind of convoluted like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, you get enough of the gist anyway. It's like
Right.
listening to somebody on a bad phone connection or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then it's just interesting to read about the backgrounds, even like with the Nag Hammadi codices and the Dead Sea Scrolls. We see these massive collections, and then in a lot of the texts that were discovered, we don't see any other. We don't have any other examples of that, and
Mhm.
so it kind of really shows how much we don't have access to and how
Mhm.
much we are missing. And because so much of that, they're one of a kind, or maybe one or two copies of different versions, but for the most part, a lot of that is missing, um,
Mhm.
and has been completely eradicated.
Yeah. Just happened to look in the chat room and it said somebody, we don't have the ability to do call-ins, but somebody had, well, I guess we do have the ability to call-ins, but we haven't been doing it.
Yeah.
Has Can we discuss the four quadrants of the Earth versus your claim of it saying four corners of the Earth? Um, my take on that is, yes, I understand that the word can mean, area, quadrant, corners is the preferred translation that you see a lot in English. The problem that I have idea with this ambiguous quadrant idea is angels are standing on the corners.
Hmm.
Like it's a physical geographic location. So everybody who wants to refute, circular enclosed world cosmology will, you go to these various, creation ministries or gotquestions.org or whatever, apologetic type websites. They'll say, well, the four corners of the earth, that's just the cardinal points, north, south, east, west. And I'm going, well, I can see that being the case from Jerusalem's perspective or Israel's perspective, that, Israel being the center of the earth and, discussing things from the four directions, north, south, east, west, presumably if you're standing in Jerusalem, from that location. The problem is there's no, other than the military academy, there's no West Point. There's no geographic location labeled West. There's no geographic location labeled East. Now, they might say it's the farthest reaches of the land, and that's been an interesting study also, the whole idea that Eretz, means land as
Uh-huh.
well as the world that we call Earth.
Yeah.
And some people argue whether or not it's a sound principle, the whole principle of first use, regardless of what people's opinions of it are. The first time the word eretz is used, it's in reference to the world proper, like not just the dirt.
Right.
In the beginning, God created the heaven. He didn't say in the beginning God created the heavens and the dirt. It says the earth, the whole thing we are standing on called earth. The dry land that is eretz doesn't show up until day 3.
Right.
So in verse 1, we have the earth proper. And the earth proper was without form and void. Darkness was on the face of the deep. So the earth proper, when I say proper, I'm talking about the world collectively. So twice, now two references, we're talking about world proper. It doesn't get to mean dirt until day 3.
Right.
Of creation. So people want to get real nitpicky throughout the, I don't know, have you seen the video that Mike Winger did? Something like Absolute Proof the Bible's Not a Flat Earth Book or some kind of nonsense like that was the title.
No, I have not.
Take whatever you need to keep your blood pressure down if you decide to watch it. It's one of those where you're yelling at the screen, not you!
Right. I will check it out.
I think his name is Mike Winger. You know who Lex Meyer is?
No.
He's a Torah guy. He has Unlearn. Is sort of his, we got to unlearn what we've learned kind of thing. Is
right.
His kind of slogan. Well, he apparently is friends with Mike Winger. So everybody and their brother was sending me that video when it first came out, and finally I'm like, all right, I'll watch it. So I have it playing as I'm driving, and I'm just kind of listening to it. And after he gets to the end, and he has some cute. First, in the beginning, he says, "Okay, I'm not going to talk about ancient Near Eastern beliefs. I'm not going to talk about the firmament. I'm not going to." He gives all this list of things he's not going to talk about, and then he goes for the low-hanging fruit, right? The real easy ones. Well, that's not talking about that. That's this, blah blah blah. That's not this. That's what I can't say. So. At the end of it, he does some Q&A with the audience, and somebody says, okay, if you found the Bible does in fact teach a flat earth, would you believe it? And he kind of took a deep breath. He said, that's a really good question. And he starts off by, he never actually says the doctrine of accommodation, but he's talking about the doctrine of accommodation. He's basically like, that's not something I would normally subscribe to, but I think, in that case I would, so I'm like, that's the crux of the matter right there. Boom. Like, after watching an hour and a half of this guy, boom, that was it. Right. He doesn't want to believe it.
Exactly, yeah.
That's just the bottom line. You don't want to believe it. So, I'm really, I'm sitting there and I'm at a red light and I'm like steaming, I'm like, Father, do I need to stop everything I'm doing and address this guy?
Answer this guy, right.
And I have many days like that where people, I'm listening to or seeing or whatever. I'm like, I just want to, debunk all the debunkers.
Right.
And right as I'm praying that, I get a phone call from Lex Meyer. He says, "Yeah, you ever hear of a guy named Mike Winger?" And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I literally just finished watching his video. It was just praying whether or not I need to address him. Why?
Right.
He said, well, because he's wondering if, because he knew that Lex knows me. So he said, Lex says, Mike's wondering if I could give him your phone number. I said, yeah, sure, that should be interesting. Go ahead, And so he calls me, and he was thinking, hey, can I get you to come on my show? And we can, discuss this. And I was thinking, it'd be interesting to have him on my show to discuss this, And I said, listen, man, I'm not interested in a debate, because I'm a passionate and competitive person, and if we're going to get into debate, I'm going to spend a significant amount of time getting to know who you are, how you think, learn where your weaknesses are, because then I'm going to destroy you. Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Right.
And I don't have time for that. He said, well,
right.
okay, well, maybe we could just have a discussion. I said, okay, how do you see that going? He said, well, I thought we could just talk about the points that I raised in my video. And I said, well, okay, but I would rather discuss the title of your video, because the title of your video says, absolute proof or incontrovertible, whatever it was worded. It was like, absolute proof the Bible is not flat earth. And I think we should start at Genesis. And man, he did not want to go there. Why do we need to do that? I'm like, are you kidding me? Why are you even asking me that question?
Right.
Really?
I mean, do you want to talk about the creation from God's perspective and as he laid it out in his word? I mean, come on.
Yeah, seriously. So, we get into all of this stuff, the quadrants, the corners, and look, Revelation says there are angels standing on the corners. So they just put a geographic location to east and west.
Uh-huh.
And you can't do that. There are no geographic locations called east and west. So I hope I answered that question. It was a long answer in the chat room, but it's stuff like this. I mean, you just keep running into one thing after another, and you're like, finally, you just have to say uncle.
Right. Yeah, there's so much of it. That's all you would be doing, really.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for a second portion.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for a second portion. I'm looking forward to, because there were quite a lot of videos and different projects that were happening at the last Flat Earth International Conference, and so hopefully some of that will come out, because there were some real serious projects done by several different groups, and so hopefully that will come out and shed a light and bring some real discussion on these kind of things.
Did you see that was it CBS where they were so worried about? Oops, sorry, I had my microphone up in the air. Did you see the this CBS news report that came out recently? The alarming trend to denying science or whatever. I forget what it is. Did you see that?
No, I have not.
It came out just recently. It's another one of those like, wow, man. They are so worried that we are breaking away from their programming.
Right. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of concern with regard to the whole scientism, and they want to label us as crazy, but the real science is on our side again, because simply put, there is no curvature, and so no matter what they say about all of the Earth being one of 9 planets in orbit around the sun being the center of our so-called solar system, all of that has no basis in reality. And so, truth is on our side, and really, we're the ones that are gaining momentum.
Yeah. I don't know, what's going to happen this year. It's like so many things are being canceled as far as conferences and stuff, and how long is this lockdown going to happen? But I was just thinking this morning, actually, in the shower, I'm thinking to myself, what? If I have the time to put together a presentation, I want to do something like 200 years of deception. And, go back to like Darwin and kind of work my way forward. Because, I've been, I'm a timeline guy. I love just laying things out linear and seeing how one thing built upon the other, and what the progression of things, were. But I mean, I think we talked about it last week. I mean, like, it's almost like everything we have been taught, we need to flip it. 180 degrees to find the truth. Everything from, dandelions are good for you, to your body creates viruses as solvents to clean itself out from toxins. You don't catch a virus, and
fevers are actually good.
Fevers are actually good for you. It's like everything, it's like, how did we get so completely off track,
Right.
So, we've, did we settle on the September 11th rescheduled date?
Yes. Even if it doesn't work for everybody, the only 3 that have not replied yet are Nathan Reynolds and Stephen Inyana Benoon, but everybody else has agreed to, and so those are going to be the dates. We'll do the Georgia Guidestones on September 11th, and then have the following 2 days. Yeah, exactly. To actually make up the conference, and I do hope that we are over all of this and things return back to a semblance of normality by that time.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yep, definitely. And I do believe we stopped at chapter 66, was it?
That would be 66 in the Charles, and 60. Let me see here. 65, 60. Yeah, I guess 66 is where I need to start in the Lawrence.
Okay. Anything else you want to bring up before we move into it?
No, I'm ready.
All right. After you, brother.
All right, let me switch over. For those watching on YouTube, they can follow along here. The Lawrence translation, chapter 66. Let me just back up and look at 65 real quick. Yeah, that was a short one. The angels that presided over the waters. Yeah, we talked about that.
Right.
Okay, 66. In those days, the word of God came to me and said, Noah, behold, thy lot has ascended up to me, a lot void of crime, a lot beloved and upright. Now then shall the angels labor at the trees, but when they proceed to this, I will put my hand upon it and preserve it. The seed of life shall arise from it, and a change shall take place, that the dry land may not be left empty. I will establish thy seed before me forever and ever, and the seed of those who dwell with thee on the surface of the earth. It shall be blessed and multiplied in the presence of the earth in the name of the Lord. And they shall confine those angels who disclosed impiety. In that burning valley it is that they shall be confined, which at first my great-grandfather Enoch showed me in the west, where there were mountains of gold and silver, of iron, of fluid metal, and of tin. I beheld that valley in which there was great perturbation, and where the waters were troubled. And when all this was effected, from the fluid mass of fire and the perturbation which prevailed in that place, there arose a strong smell of sulfur, which became mixed with the waters in the valley of the angels, who had been guilty of seduction, burned underneath its soil. Through that valley also rivers of fire were flowing, to which those angels shall be condemned, who seduce the inhabitants of the earth. And in those days shall these waters be to kings, to princes, to the exalted, and to the inhabitants of the earth, and for the healing of the soul and body, and for the judgment of the spirit. Their spirits shall be full of revelry, that they may be judged in their bodies, because they have denied the Lord of spirits. And although they perceive their condemnation by day by day, they believe not in his name. And as the inflammation of their bodies shall be great, so shall their spirits undergo a change forever. For no word which is uttered before the Lord of spirits shall be in vain. Judgment has come upon them, because they trusted in their carnal revelry and denied the Lord of spirits. In those days shall the waters of that valley be changed. For when the angels shall be judged, then shall the heat of those springs of water experience an alteration. And when the angels shall descend, the water of the springs shall again undergo a change and be frozen. Then I heard holy Michael answering and saying, This judgment with which the angels shall be judged shall bear testimony against the kings, the princes, and those who possess the earth. For these waters of judgment shall be for their healing and for the death of their bodies. But they shall not perceive and believe that the waters will be changed and become a fire, which shall blaze forever.
Okay, 60, that's 67 in the R.H. Charles for me, so I'll just read from there.
Okay.
And in those days the word of God came unto me, and he said unto me, Noah, thy lot has come up before me, a lot without blame, a lot of love and uprightness. And now the angels are making a wooden building, and when they have completed that task, I will place my hand upon it and preserve it, and there shall come forth from it the seed of life. And a change shall set in, so that the earth will not remain without inhabitant. And I will make fast thy seed before me forever and ever. And I will spread abroad those who dwell with thee. It shall not be unfruitful on the face of the earth, but it shall be blessed and multiply on the earth in the name of the Lord. And he will imprison those angels who have shown unrighteousness in that burning valley, which my grandfather Enoch had formerly shown me in the west among the mountains of gold and silver and iron and soft metal and tin. And I saw that valley in which there was a great convulsion, and a convulsion of the waters. And when all this took place from that fiery molten metal, and from the convulsion thereof in that place, there was produced a smell of sulfur, and it was connected with those waters in that valley of the angels who had led astray mankind, burned beneath that land. And through its valleys proceed streams of fire, where these angels are punished who had led astray those who dwell upon the earth. But those whose waters shall in those days serve for the kings, for the healing of the body, but for the punishment of the spirit. Now their spirit is full of lust, that they may be punished in their body. For they have denied the Lord of spirits, and see their punishment daily, and yet believe not in his name. And in proportion as the burning of their bodies becomes severe, a corresponding change shall take place in their spirit forever and ever. For before the Lord of spirits none shall utter an idle word, for the judgment shall come upon them, because they believe in the lust of their body, and deny the Spirit of the Lord. And those same waters will undergo a change in those days. For when those angels are punished in these waters, springs shall change their temperature. And when the angels ascend, this water of the springs shall change and become cold. And I heard Michael answering and saying, the judgment wherewith the angels are judged is a testimony for the kings and the mighty who possess the earth, because these waters of judgment minister to the healing of the body of the kings and the lust of their body. Therefore they will not see and will not believe that those waters will change and become a fire which burns forever.
So the building at the start of this, what do you make of that? Do you think that that's referring to the ark or something else?
That's what I take it to be. But it's interesting because in this verse, it's speaking about how the angels are making this wooden building. And, according to the other stories, it was Noah and his children that had constructed the ark. And then they were shut therein, and they were given all the, the specifics of how to do it, the design and the measures and everything of that nature. And so,
yeah, I mean, it's not explicitly describing the ark here.
Right.
I'm wondering, I can't recall, does it say anything else where in the Book of Enoch about them constructing the ark, or is this just an assumption based on what is said here in this chapter?
I would have to say that it is an assumption, because we don't see that specifically. And here it says that, and who knows if this building is the ark, but that's what I would assume. But in all of the other stories, like in the Colburn Bible, it discusses how Noah, and they call him Hanok in this particular text, that the children of Cain had made fun of him because he was told to build the ark in the mountains, and God told him that the waters would come to him. And so, he was a laughingstock because there was no water, there was no lakes, no rivers, nothing. And he was constructing this structure in the high mountains. and they laughed and laughed and laughed and made fun of him, and that was a large part of their leisure time over the course of that year that they had of that reprieve, or that time that they had. They would watch him building and constructing the ark and then make fun of him and his family. And eventually the waters did reach that level, and then they were locked therein securely, and then the waters lifted it.
So, let's see. It says, in those days, the word of God, that's interesting, the word of God, came unto me, and he said to me, Noah, thy lot has come up before me, a lot without blame. So this where he was found righteous and pure in his generations.
Yeah.
And now the angels are making a wooden building. So, is this a vision? Is this a prophecy? Is this a dream? Is this an actual conversation? What are your thoughts on, how is this conversation playing out?
Yeah, I do think that it is a conversation, and that, of course, the word of the Lord, that is Christ Yahushua speaking to him, and it shows just like in the Pentateuch, the Aramaic Targum, you see the interactions of the word of the Lord with all of the different patriarchs and the prophets all throughout the history of Israel. I think that, here the Book of Enoch is referencing the same, that this is Yeshua speaking to Noah. But, again, it maybe it is a vision, maybe it is what he sees in vision and is told with regard to watching and seeing the angels, perhaps building this ark, and then in reality, he and his children have to do the same, and actually manifest the structure.
I backed up to 64 in the Lawrence, and that's where we saw Noah going to the ends of the earth to go see his great-grandfather Enoch.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember if it was somebody in the chat room or what, but the thought was brought out, and it occurred to me thinking, okay, we always assumed that Enoch was translated up to heaven, but yet, Jesus said, no one's seen the Father but me, no one's gone to the Father except me. He makes these statements, and those are one of the arguments that people use against the Book of Enoch, is like, how did he get to do it if Jesus said no one's done it but him? And so, maybe a way of reconciling that is, in Genesis, all we get is Enoch walked with God and was not, for God took him. It doesn't tell you where he took him. Right. We always assume where he took him. But, what if there's an outer region at the edge of the dome that is habitable, and maybe that would explain the 500th year of Enoch's life, is he's still here, still accumulating age, at the time when he was 500 years old, 200 plus years after, or so after, it says Enoch walked with God and God took him at 365.
Right.
So, or maybe close to 200 years, whatever. So maybe, because, when you describe his early accounts of what he's seeing, it may line up actually quite interestingly with the stuff that the Ancient Aliens crowd is talking about. When I went to the Contact in the Desert conference last year, and they canceled this one this year, by the way, because of COVID-19. It was supposed to be next month. But they were all about Antarctica, man. Like, literally every other session, somebody was talking about Antarctica. Like, it's the focus of the whole world. We had various dignitaries from around the world, congressmen, presidents, going down there recently. Just within the last few years, the patriarch, the Orthodox Church,
Right.
lots of weird stuff, and going down there, and all kinds of discussion about the black sun and huge walls that have strange writing on them, and
Right.
of course they want to spin it off to be like an ancient alien civilization crashed there centuries or millennia ago, and they're about to reveal themselves again and what have you. So they spin it in that direction. But what if, just throwing out a what if here, what if there is an abode beyond the dome where various beings exist, including perhaps Enoch? Because Noah was aware of a geographic location that he could go to on Earth to find Enoch.
Right.
You follow?
Yeah, I do. And even though it says here the ends of the earth, it also makes me wonder if this could still be, like, instead of being the outer circle, that perhaps
another rim?
Or no, like the North Pole. Like,
Going north.
Yeah, that would be the ends of the earth as well, just on the
other end,
interior. Yeah. And
that's a good one. I mean, you and I have talked about that before, is
right.
Just how much we think the north is actually far more interesting to go to than the south.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that's Jacob's ladder. That's the entrance for both the throne of the Most High God, as well as the hollow earth entrance into Sheol, and then the whole thing of Shambhala, Asgard, Thule, all these Hyperborea, all these different places in consideration, and then the Mount of the Congregation as well. And in the Greek mythology, it says that the demigods, they live on top. And even in the Vedic, the Srimad Bhagavatam, that they describe, the so-called gods and goddesses, the pantheon of the fallen ones, as having abode within that region as well. And so that was my thought, is if instead of the ends of the earth, as far as with regard to the outward, if it would be the inner, like the north, because that is also the ends of the earth.
Good point. I'm looking at verse 1 of 65 in the Charles, and 64 in the Lawrence. It's kind of different here. Like in Lawrence, it says, "In those days Noah saw that the earth became inclined," and Charles says, "In those days Noah saw that the earth had sunk down, and its destruction was nigh." So the idea of sinking down, when we think of the whirlpool waterfall,
right?
You may be onto something there. And so, then what if that's where Enoch was taken to? That he was taken to the Mount of Congregation, and just throwing out a sci-fi what if, not thus saith the Lord or anything, just thinking out loud here. What if that Mount Meru has an entrance into Mount Meru that maybe perhaps has some sort of elevator thing that takes you up to the top, to the circle, of the congregation, I'm thinking of the High Council of the Jedi Order, right? They met on the top of this tall spire, and so obviously you had to get up there somehow, presumably by an elevator of some sort, and they had the council there. So what if there is a way into the mountain and up to the top? That might explain a whole lot of the visions and the perspective to see over the whole earth and all that kind of stuff. And makes for some great narrative too. Like, I'm thinking out loud for some.
Absolutely. The exceedingly high mountain, and then the vision of Jacob's ladder, and how the angels ascending and descending. And then, there's that whole, the testimony of the one fallen angel that describes to Solomon about how the fallen angels, they have no rest in the upper heavens, whereas the holy angels, they have a place where they can hang out and communicate and share prophecy and have discussions with the Most High God. But with regard to the fallen ones, they have to exert themselves to get up that high, and then strain themselves to remain there even for long enough to hear or to catch rumor or to hear a prophecy. And then once they are exhausted and can't sustain themselves, they fall like a shooting star.
Ah,
That's the Testament of Solomon, uh,
ah,
the chapter 113. And he describes how that, when they're not able to keep themselves in flight any longer, they fall like a streaming star and crash into the earth.
interesting.
All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for second hour.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
I therefore, having heard this, glorified the Lord God, and again I questioned the demon Orneus, saying, Tell me how ye can ascend into heaven, being demons, and amidst the stars and holy angels intermingle. And he answered, Just as things are fulfilled in heaven, so also on earth are fulfilled the types of all of them. For there are principalities, authorities, world rulers, and we demons fly about in the air, and we hear the voices of the heavenly beings, and survey all the powers. And as having no ground on which to alight and rest, we lose strength and fall off like leaves from trees. And men seeing us imagine that the stars are falling from heaven. But it is not really so, O King. But we fall because of our weakness, and because we have nowhere anything to lay hold of. And so we fall down like lightning in the depth of night, and suddenly, and we set cities in flames, and fire the fields, for the stars have firm foundations in the heavens like the sun and the moon, whereas they do not. And so, this is Orneus talking about how they try to sneak in to listen to the holy angels and to get information, but when they tire, they fall like streaking stars.
That's fascinating. During the break, I decided to just look up because every year we have annual meteor showers.
Right.
Yeah, some are more impressive than others.
Yes.
You have the Leonids, the Geminids, the Perseids that come in different times of the year. But I was just looking stuff up during the break, and let me share the screen here. Saw something interesting. It said, interesting information. It says, meteor showers are more active in the northern hemisphere of the Earth. People living in the northern hemisphere will see more meteor showers than those in the southern hemisphere. So maybe there's a reason for that.
Right.
If the Earth is as we believe it is, according to the Book of Enoch and the canonical text as well, then we know it's in the north. The amount of the congregations in the north.
Right.
And so, we see that they do present themselves before God, the angels. And
Yes.
Satan was among them. Maybe there are regular times of appointment that they have to check in or what have you, or they try to do things and, on an annual cycle, and they keep getting booted out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, people ask that question all the time. It's like, what are meteors? I'm like, look, I don't know. I mean, the question, let's move the goalposts as far as I'm concerned. The question is, what's the shape of the Earth? So why did the first thing you do is look up in the sky?
Right.
But, I mean, to be fair, those are interesting questions, and, we should try to see what we can figure out. But, we have ancient texts saying what you just read, and then we have a science website saying, yeah, you're going to see the most in the north. Well, maybe that's why. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And I do think that, it describes also in the scriptures that at certain times that the windows of heaven are open for the coming and the going of angels in this different manner, and that traditionally there's different celebrations, and even the blessings are poured forth in different manner on different occasion. And certainly we know that the angels are also celebrating the Levitical feast days, the holy days, in the manner that we are, and that they have held and kept these ordinances for very much longer than even we have here on the earth. Especially like with Passover, the symbolism, the meaning, and the profundity of it as holy day and feast of celebration, its connections to the liberation of the Israelites during the Exodus, and then also of how we are sealed through the promise of Christ, and how he was the Passover lamb, and that we are sealed from the authority of death and given salvation, and that we are redeemed through him. All of that is so deeply profound as well. I mean, just that one, as far as Passover, as celebration, as feast day, as holy day, it summarizes the fullness of the fall of humanity and our redemption through the Son of God, the Son of Man, the elect one, as it says in the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, amen.
Amen. Continue.
Other thought that occurred to me, getting back to the meteor issue, whatever those things are, they come in at all kinds of different angles, streaking across the sky, and we're told that those are rocks burning up in the atmosphere. Okay, let's go with that theory. If those are rocks burning up in the atmosphere, presumably the debris left over from comets in that cosmology, or something else of that nature that's making an outer loop, leaving debris behind that we go through. Why is it that all of the impacts that we see on the moon and other so-called planets are straight on?
Right.
You never see an impact coming in at an angle.
Right. No sideways.
Yeah, it's like, look, go get a telescope, high-power binoculars, even a camera, and point it at the moon, and you're going to see all perfectly round circles.
Right.
Are you telling me every single meteor hit at a 90-degree angle, like perfect?
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't make sense.
No, Yeah, because you would expect to see like a plane crashing, sliding, and digging out a deep ravine or something of that nature. And there's nothing like that. It's just all pockmarks.
Pockmarks. Bob and Cami Nodell, they did a whole series on the moon as made out of, I think it's called silestite rock. Whatever it was called, I think it was something like that. It is biofluorescent in this, or not bio. What is the word? Something luminescent. I don't know. It's like when you get the glow in the dark watch. We used to get when we were kids in the cereal box or something. And you hold it up to the light for a little while, and then it creates its own light.
Right, glows.
That, like, when we get into the chapters on the heavenly luminaries, we see that the moon does receive something from the sun,
right,
and then gives. So it makes more sense then that it's not just a reflector, like we're told, a rock reflecting light, but it is a rock that accumulates light and then gives it.
Yeah, converts it.
Sends it back out, just like the glow dark watch does. And she was saying that particular rock, like if you had a spherical chunk of it and you expose it to water, it pockmarks just like the moon is. So being that particular rock got hit by a whole lot of water, both shooting up into the sky and coming down from the firmament, that may explain why it has the perfectly spherical pockmarks. As opposed to impact craters. And the other thing I thought of, I've been watching the show Hawaii Five-0, the newer version that's out on CBS. Actually, really, really enjoy that show. But they do some aerial shots, really beautiful shots of the Hawaiian Islands and stuff. And one I think is the main island. Has like a huge crater, right in the middle of the city. And that's not an impact crater. That's a volcanic crater, But if you put that on the moon, it would look just like what you would think is an impact crater. So, I've been at the crater, the one in Arizona there.
Arizona,
the Starman, and I've seen other ones like that. And I'm thinking, what if that's, again, because that's like a 90-degree boom, thing. What if it's not an impact crater like we're told it is, but rather it's the remnant of a volcanic crater, just like the one in
A
Hawaii.
lava
It's like-
tube or something.
yeah, I mean, you start looking at things a lot differently. It's like, they gave us a pair of glasses to look through, and they want us to see everything the way they tell us to, but there are other answers that would provide. This the whole thing is 2 + 2 is not the only way to get to 4.
Right.
If 4 is the solution, there are lots of different ways to get to, probably an infinite number of ways to get to 4 besides 2 + 2. So, I find myself, especially ever since getting into this research, looking at everything from as many different angles as I'm capable of coming up with,
Right.
and realizing there's not just one answer that fits.
Yeah, and certainly what we are told with regard to explanations from scientism, a lot of that I am understanding and coming to realization is pure fabrication, theoretical, and
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and that they have no idea even what they're talking about, especially when they're basing everything on the whole heliocentric mindset, because that, again, has no basis in reality. So those are just lies foisted upon lies and propaganda to try to explain stuff they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Going back to the Book of Enoch, we see in 64 in the Lawrence, Noah goes to see Enoch. So I think you're right, man. I think it makes more sense that he's gone to the center to see him.
Yes, that's what I think.
Either idea is intriguing, but it seems to me, geographically speaking, it would have been a lot more obtainable for him to go to the inner part of the sun than the outer, presuming he's somewhere in the region of Israel, Israel, Babylon, the what we call the Levant, that whole general region, which is where he would be. That's where the ark landed. So presumably it was, somewhere in that region anyway. So then, getting to the chapter of the wooden box. Now it says in the Lawrence, it says, "Now then shall the angels labor at the trees." They shall labor at the trees. And your translation said that, let me skip ahead here. It said and it had building in parentheses, so it's probably probably an insertion. I don't have a problem with it being the ark. The progression of the revelation that's being given here would make sense that it could be, or that maybe there's pardon the word, a hybrid between the Charles and the Lawrence, where it says they labor at the trees in Lawrence, and it says building in Charles. Maybe it was the angels that gathered the wood for Noah.
Right.
And my whole thing is like,
or even assisted,
Yeah. That's what I was going to get to. Is like, Noah's given the instructions. He's given the blueprint. He was not given criteria on who he could use for contract labor.
Right.
And actually, the Book of Joshua tells you that they only spent 5 years building the ark. So he clearly had help. I mean, it wasn't just some 600-year-old guy, carving trees into a huge ship.
Right.
And even his sons. I mean, they had to grow up first, and they're about 100 years old at the time of the flood. So, of course, in those days, 100 is considered a child, just like in the millennial reign. If they aged the same way we do now, they would be fully formed adults and capable of helping, within, 15 years or so of their birth. But, just thinking it's 3 guys or 4 guys building that ark in 5 years, seems to me they would have had help.
Right.
Of some sort.
And then, with the angels being proficient and having the ability to ensure that it is made properly, it also reminds me of the churches in Ethiopia, the ones that were supposedly constructed by the angels.
Mm.
And even though the Ethiopians were said to have to help them, that these churches were built, right out of the bedrock and made of single stone and carved out from the landscape. And there's the whole. You've seen those underground churches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
And
mean, even if you think
they're
of places,
magnificent.
yeah, if you think places like Petra,
Oh, yeah, exactly, right.
and that whole region over there. I mean,
Right.
was it the Horites? I think were the ones that were cave dwellers. One of them, one of the breeds of giants were known as cave dwellers, troglodytes. But yeah, I mean, if that's angel tech, that enables you to build magnificent structures into the sides of mountains,
Right.
Why not? I mean, it's a big project. I mean, I've been on a aircraft carrier before, and Noah's Ark is pretty close to, and that's a city floating on the water,
right.
or like a cruise ship for that matter.
Uh-huh.
So, okay. I don't think there was anything else really here that jumped out at me. Anything else? The angels being buried. It says something about shown in the west. Enoch had formerly shown to me in the west, verse 4 of the Charles. And he will imprison those angels who have shown unrighteousness in that burning valley, which my grandfather Enoch had formerly shown me in the west. Now, this is just speculation. But we know in Revelation that there are 4 angels bound in the river Euphrates.
Right.
So it has been my contention that when Adam and Eve got booted out, I know you have a different take on the where the location of the garden is. I have a earthbound, and you have more of a heavenly location. But in my thesis of Israel being the garden and Jerusalem Shechem being ground zero, where the 2 trees are, if you go like almost exactly due east of there, you end up in Babylon. And so that was part of my Yahuwah triangle thesis, was that something's always created or birthed in Egypt, gets to go into Israel, disobedience gets you booted to Babylon, repentance gets you back to Israel. If you don't repent, you might end up going all the way back to Egypt to come back out of a new birth. Like there's this triangle thing that's always the whole Bible is like ping-ponging between these points. And so if they were even further east than Babylon by the time of Enoch, from Adam to Enoch, if they went further east, then west would be right back in the Fertile Crescent, the Tigris Euphrates Valley area, where in that region there's the Haditha Dam. Have you ever looked into that?
No, I have not.
Let me just quick.
Is that the one that kind of brought up all the waters? Is it for the Jordan?
No, it's in Iraq.
Okay.
So let me throw something over here on the screen for people watching on YouTube. If you just do Haditha Dam, fallen angels, demons, you'll find lots of stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember the stories that you had told me about the soldiers. Yeah,
actually, I meant to get into it with Justin Best last night on the show. I didn't on the show, but we talked about it off the air. He was stationed there for quite some time.
Oh, wow.
And I was asking him about it. He said, I didn't see or hear anything myself. I was there for a while, but he said, that is a freaky place, and it is full of stories. Like, everybody's got a story,
Uh-huh.
But, I mean, like, I guess they were using it as a like a prison for
right.
Prisoners of war and what have you. And they're like, shoot us, just kill us, don't send us down there. Like the people, I was reading stuff and listening to videos on it and stuff. People talking about how anything but that, like, don't put us down there. We don't want to. Like, they have this understanding that that's where the angels are buried.
Uh-huh.
Somewhere under there.
Yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't want to go through that experience either. You can imagine the darkness down there as well. Reminds me of that freaky video where the people had dropped that microphone down into
Yeah, in the hole.
well, yeah, the oil well hole, or
Yeah.
where they were drilling, and all the screams and that is very creepy.
Yeah. Makes you wonder. So, that would be my take, is that Enoch had formerly shown to him in the West, especially considering where the ark landed. It makes sense to me that they would have been further east, and that they could have been talking about this location here that we now call the Euphrates and Tigris, Valley area.
Yeah. Well, my take on that as well too is that even though I do believe that paradise is established and connected to the north, that Adam and Eve eventually did move east of that location, and so they would ended up where you were talking about and in that area with regard to the Fertile Crescent. But certainly as far as the North Polar projection map, looking at it from Gerardus, the Mercator map, that area being subdivided into 4 sections, the 4 rivers, it certainly seems to be connected in some manner to that. But definitely the rivers do elongate further from that particular region and come down and out to even what we are talking about with regard to the Mesopotamian area and that valley and all.
Yeah. Okay. Let me switch back over here to the screen. I don't think of anything else. Anything else you want to comment on that chapter?
The only other thing is that where it speaks about the temperature of the water being different. What are your thoughts on that?
I did read that. It's in verse 11. And those same waters will undergo a change in those days, for when those angels are punished in these waters, these water springs shall change their temperature. And when the angels ascend, this water of the spring shall change and become cold. So, I guess it sounds like, they're of a moderate temperature and the angels get put into it and they get heated up. And then when the angels leave, it gets cold.
Yeah.
Don't know quite else what to make of that, but
right.
It is interesting.
Yeah. Just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those kind of cryptic things, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's see. I'll continue. How much time we have? We got about 5 minutes before the break or so.
Yes. 3 minutes, actually.
Oh, 3 minutes? I might be able to get through this. Okay. 67 in the Lawrence. After this, he gave me the characteristical marks of the secret things in the book of my great-grandfather Enoch, and in the parables which had been given to him, inserting them for me among the words of the book of parables. At that time, holy Michael answered and said, Raphael, the power of the Spirit hurries me away and impels me on the severity of the judgment, of the secret judgment of the angels, who is capable of beholding the endurance of that severe judgment which has taken place and been made permanent, without being melted at the sight of it. Again, holy Michael answered and said to holy Raphael, who is there whose heart is not softened by it, and whose reins are not troubled at this thing? Judgment has gone forth against them by those who have thus dragged them away, and that was when they stood in the presence of the Lord of Spirits. In like manner also holy Raphael said to Raphael, they shall not be before the eyes of the Lord, since the Lord of Spirits has been offended with them. For like lords, they have conducted themselves. Therefore will he bring upon them a secret judgment forever and ever. For neither shall angel nor man receive a portion of it, but they alone shall receive their own judgment forever and ever. This was the chapter. It's 69, I believe, in Charles. Or 68, 69. Yes. That I was like, No, there's no multiple incursions.
Right.
You'd have to be Dumb and Dumber on steroids to be an angel and say, "Hey, yeah, let's do that again."
Right.
When Michael, okay, next to the Godhead, he's the tough guy.
Uh-huh.
Michael himself is trembling in fear
Right.
what he's seeing happen to the other guys, and he's like, "Yeah, ain't no one doing that again."
Right.
That was the chapter that sealed the deal for me, and the fact that there's absolutely no reference to another incursion anywhere. It's all based on in my opinion, flawed understanding of the and also after that of Genesis 6:4, which is in a pre-flood context.
Right.
Verified by the Book of Jubilees 7:24, it says, "And after this," the after this is the after that of Genesis 6:4, and it's in a pre-flood context. The this was angels came down mated with women, and then he says, "And after this, that event, they started blending species."
Uh-huh. All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for final segment already. It's so crazy.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together. Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right, welcome back for a final segment, everybody. We are on the R.H. Charles, chapter 68. Did you want to comment or say anything before I move into this?
Yeah, go ahead and read the Charles version, then we can
And then we'll
talk more
go
about
into
it.
it. All right,
Yeah.
sounds good. And after that, my grandfather Enoch gave me the teaching of all the secrets in the book and the parables, which had been given to him, and he put them together for me in the words of the book of the parables. And on that day, Michael answered Raphael and said, "The power of the Spirit transports and makes me to tremble because of the severity of the judgment of the secrets, the judgments of the angels. Who can endure the severe judgment which has been executed and before which they melt away?" And Michael answered again and said to Raphael, "Who is he whose heart is not softened concerning it, and whose reins are not troubled by this word of judgment that has gone forth upon them because of those who have thus led them out?" And it came to pass when he stood before the Lord of Spirits, Michael said thus to Raphael, "I will not take their part under the eye of the Lord, for the Lord of Spirits has been angry with them because they do as if they were the Lord. Therefore, all that is hidden shall come upon them forever and ever. For neither angel nor man shall have his portion in it, but alone they have received their judgment forever and ever."
Seems pretty definitive to me. No one else is going to do that.
Right? Absolutely. Just a couple days ago, we were talking about how just stupid the angels that decided to make a pact, the 200 watchers, they all made this pact to do and commit this sin and to give up their eternity to have the chance to go and lust after women. I mean, that's got to be the dumbest thing that you could do. And yet they all bound themselves in mutual imprecations to follow it out and to not turn away from it. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing that and the angels would give up their eternity just to indulge in um, sexual activity with the daughters of Cain.
Yeah, well, maybe there are sheeple in heaven too.
Yeah, right.
They got some kind of heavenly CNN or something up there that the devil is in charge of the media department, and
Right.
I mean, he had to have sold them on a real bill of goods to get.
Oh my goodness, no doubt.
Well, because it's my belief. I can't recall a text that would specifically say this, but it's my belief that these 200 are part of the 1/3 that went with Satan, and that this was a part of a plan. When we see the first prophecy in the Bible is in Genesis 3:15, where Yahuwah tells the devil that Eve's seed's going to crush his head. And I always say to my audience whenever I'm talking about this in a conference, I'm like, getting your head's a bad thing. Getting your head crushed is a bad thing, right? I mean, if you're receiving that prophecy, her seed's going to crush your head. What are you going to do to her seed? Well, you're going to jack it up. You're going to do everything you can to prevent her seed from happening. Now, in reference to the whole serpent seed idea, that just makes more sense to me now that, because it says her seed and his seed, serpent, will be at war. Well, I mean, if there is no seed of the serpent, there's no war. There's no one to war with. I mean, there's there's no war. You got to have you have to have both. If you accept that she has seed and that seed eventually leads to Messiah, then you have to accept that that seed's at war with another seed that's eventually going to lead to the anti-Messiah.
Yes, absolutely.
In the final battle. So, have you? I don't know why this popped in my head, but have you ever? Do you remember the Christian musician Carmen?
No.
Okay. Maybe we have to get off the show to just look up Carmen and
right.
the Champion.
Okay.
I was like so hooked on that. He was an entertainer more than a I mean, he sang songs too, but he was really known for doing like dramatic presentations with music. And so he would tell stories like parables, so to speak, and maybe sing a chorus, as part of it or whatever. And he had some really, really good ones. But one of them was called The Champion. And basically, of course, now looking back on it, there's plenty of things both theologically and cosmologically that I would disagree with, especially cosmologically. So bear that in mind. This is from the 80s now. But he this is right about probably on the heels of Rocky III and during Rocky IV, that time frame when Carmen came out with The Champion, and it's a cosmic battle between Satan and Jesus. And I just, for some reason, it popped into my head like about a week and a half ago, and I just decided to do a search for it on YouTube, and sure enough, I found it. The live presentation, if you listen to it, is okay, but if you find the actual studio recorded version of it on there, it's really good. It depicts like Satan when it says arrogantly prancing, hands held high, draped in a sparkling shroud, trolled by demons, Satan ascended from hell. And it's like. And Jesus, and they get in the ring. It's like Satan's like, I'm gonna bust you up, and Jesus goes, go ahead, make my day, and it's just,
right.
And then when it gets, the fight starts and everything, and you have this big, showdown, and it says the final blow saved for the final round. Prophetically, Christ's hands came down, and Satan struck with vengeance. And they depict, Jesus going down in death, and Satan's like, whoa, yeah. And he says, then he in unexpected horror, he shrieks when God started the count by saying 10, 9. He's like, hey, wait a minute, God. 8. Stop, you're counting wrong. 7. Instead of counting, 1 to 10, he's counting down. And then Christ, he rises and he's like, and he goes, 2, and then 1. He's like, oh no. He's like, oh yes. He has 1. Just thinking about the enmity of the seeds and her seed shall crush his head. That song kind of just in a parable kind of thing is really good. Brings it all out. But I'm saying, okay, so Cain kills Abel. Then they have Seth. And I always tell the audience, I'm like, okay, if you had 2 children and one of them killed the other, and then you have a third, don't you think you might be a little protective, maybe overprotective of the third child? Of course you are. So I don't see Cain getting to Seth. So then you got Plan B, right? Angels come down and mate with women. Why? What is the whole reason for it? Well, go back to that prophecy. The serpent's seed is going to be at war with the seed of the woman. Because the seed of the woman, if her seed's allowed to continue, it's going to crush his head.
Right.
So I mean, Satan had to have done one heck of a sales pitch on the 200 and talking with Semjaza as their leader, saying, "Hey, bro, I got this plan." Right? They had to have had some understanding of the Son of Man, especially in this Enoch narrative. If the Son of Man has been up there with the Lord of Spirits all the time, his elect. Then the Satan had to have known that there's got to be some kind of plan for him to be released on Earth at some point.
Right.
And so his plan then would have been to create a counterfeit Son of God. Oh,
absolutely.
How about over 200? How about 600,000? Great men of renown that over many different cultures would become worshipped as gods for thousands of years.
Yes.
You talked about earlier the various other gods of antiquity. Pick a civilization. They had their gods,
Right.
And they had their sons of God.
Mm-hmm.
So you had all these counterfeit sons of God until Yahuwah himself decided to release the Son of Man, the elect one on earth, as the one and only true Son of God.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole purpose, is to exalt his throne above the stars and the clouds of God, and to be like the Most High, to take his seat in above the crown, the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. And so, yeah, the whole New World Order, in fact, it's, a lot of people think it's about global domination, global in quotes, and it's all about world government and police state tyranny and all that. But that's just to set up the beast's kingdom and then to hand it over to the Antichrist, the false Messiah. So everything is about diverting the true worship, stealing it, and for a time in being, the abomination of desolation that declares himself to be as God in the temple of God. And so, yeah, the whole story, the war in heaven, what I call the great contest, it's all about the efforts of Satan especially, but Legion together, because we are many. They are attempting to set up kingdoms of their own to rule in impunity, to not be servants, but to be like God for the time that they are allowed. And so, yeah, that's the fullness of the story. And I think that's why it's so important that people examine the Book of Enoch to understand the greater context of that story, because it also links to the whole provision in when Joshua and the patriarchs enter into the promised land to take back what had been stolen by the Canaanites. The whole provision to slaughter every man, woman, and child. And unless you understand how they were involved in abomination, they were worshiping their fathers, these fallen angels, as the pantheon of gods and goddesses, how they were involved in a ritual. The worship was, connected with abomination, child victims, sacrifice, cannibalism, the drinking of blood, all these different things, sexual depravity, homosexuality, orgies, even ritualized prostitution. I mean, these kind of things, unless you understand the origin of these people, where they came from, then you really don't understand the fullness of the war against them.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that was one of the things that really, in addition to the various proofs that you brought out, both from the canonical text as well as other things regarding the serpent seed, was I always had this thought in my head that these people are clearly of a different seed.
Yes.
Now, whether it was just of Nephilim, carry over, it is interesting that Canaan is the firstborn off the ark. I believe he was born on the ark, frankly. They were on the ark for a year, and he was already there for Noah to curse him.
Right.
Some people think that, when it says that Ham uncovered the nakedness of his father in the book of Leviticus, that's basically having sex with his mother.
Right.
And they're saying, Canaan was the offspring of Ham with his mother. I disagree.
Yes.
I think Put was, but Canaan was already present at the time when that event took place and Noah cursed him, because he had to be there to be cursed. Right? So he's the first of the post-flood Nephilim, and the word Canaan means trafficker. So when you think of all the trafficking that's taking place with this certain group of people, it seems to me that they are at the very least that bloodline, if not going all the way back to Cain. And it may be one and the same anyway, because apparently the angels that came down and mated with women mated with the daughters of Cain in the first place.
Right.
So either way you look at it, there's clearly a different bloodline out there that is predisposed to just unbelievable evil,
Right.
that the average person would never even think of doing.
Right. Yeah, and as I had brought up previous shows, Cain was even said to have a seraphic appearance, and that there even Christ alludes to his genealogy as being a brood of vipers, a den of vipers, and so the whole thing with we have the stories and the rumors and the mythology of reptilian people, the Nagas in India that were a serpent race. I believe that in some manner these people are connected to the children of Cain, and that Cain again was said to have this seraphic appearance, and that he resembled the seraphim angels, which the whole thing of Sarah is serpent-like or snake-like, dragon-like, and that we have in the ancient mythologies, these dragon-like entities as seating the different kings and queens in different regions of the world. And so,
like the Chinese talk about some of their founding emperors as being born of a dragon, or born of some kind of a seraphic or serpentine type of being.
Yeah, so I think the underlying truth of all of this is that it links to what we see revealed in the Bible in the garden with the beguilement of Eve, and how the Samael, the venom, the viper of God, the angel of death, Satan, that in Revelation 12 he's also described as that ancient dragon, that old serpent. And so I see these connections as being more than just symbolic or metaphorical, that there is some truth to them in a manner that we can't really grasp or understand, but that certainly all the stories and mythologies point to this in the manner that we're talking about it now.
Yeah, agreed. There's, I think it's Steve Quayle is fond of saying that the understanding of the Book of Enoch is the Rosetta Stone for, or the understanding of the Nephilim, I should say, in Genesis chapter 6, with the angel incursion of Genesis chapter 6 is a Rosetta Stone for understanding all of history and certainly much of the Bible.
Yeah, I agree. Because there, again, is this underlying truth which unites all things, the ancient mysteries, the oral traditions, with the biblical prophetic side of what is revealed in the Word. And again, Christ alluding to the Pharisees as the murderers of the prophets from the time of Abel to Zacharias.
Good point.
And Cain, without a doubt, is the one that murdered Abel, and so there's no getting around that they are connected to Cain and his bloodline.
Yeah, I now wholeheartally agree.
Well, I appreciate your open-mindedness.
It took a while. I had to, overcome some of my own cognitive dissonance, I guess, but it makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
I mean, just like the cosmology. It's like, okay,
right.
As soon as you finally, Uncle, okay, I give up.
Yes,
I accept it. Like all of a sudden the Bible, and certainly the Book of Enoch, especially in the chapters that we're getting ready to jump into,
yes, exactly,
completely come to life. And the same thing happened with the whole issue with Cain.
Right.
For me.
Yeah, once it becomes clear, and once you open your mind to some of the other possibilities and some of the ancient sources, it becomes clearer and clearer, in my opinion.
I don't really. I can understand the vitriolic response to not wanting to accept biblical cosmology. I get it. Like, we saw the globe in our classroom since we were in kindergarten, and we all grew up on Star Wars and Star Trek and all that stuff. So, to be confronted with the idea that everything we thought we knew about this world that we live in and its place in the cosmos could be completely wrong, I get the cognitive dissonance. I get the anger. I get the response. I don't get the response. I don't understand the response of people who go insane over the serpent seed thing.
I don't get it either.
We have no dog in this hunt. Like, in other words,
Right.
We all had something invested in the globe. So I understand the response. What difference does it make if Cain was the offspring of Adam or of Satan?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, by the time we get to the flood, he's done with anyway. Yes, we have serpent seed. No matter how you look at it, you have serpent seed in the post-flood world, whether you think it's just from the Genesis 6 incursion or the Genesis 3 incursion.
Right.
Either way, we got the same net result.
Right.
So why people go completely insane and will label you a heretic and everything else under the sun over that, I don't understand. How does it affect any part of our life, whether we believe that or not? The net result's the same either way.
Yeah.
And
I don't get it either.
The one question that I had, and I've run this by you before, but maybe just for sake of review, is that we see the severe judgment that the Watchers endure here in this chapter we just looked at. Why didn't Satan get that? And my answer to that now, anytime, I'm entertaining a thought without accepting it, I'm flipping the board, so to speak. In other words, how would Zen answer this question? Or somebody that's really on board with this. Like, in other words, I have my question and all that stuff, but what if I was defending instead of attacking? What if I was defending? How would I defend it? And so when I thought about that, I thought, well, because the law hadn't been laid down yet. In other words, if Satan's the first offender, and that led to all kinds of problems immediately, you could see where God goes, okay, time to lay down a law here. No one's doing that again.
Right.
And because the offspring doesn't have a choice in the matter. Like, I didn't have any choice of being here.
Right.
That's why God shows mercy even to Cain.
Yes, exactly.
He's like, look, I get it. You got a rough dad. Okay, but hey, man, if you just repent, I'll take care of you. And look, I'll even put a mark on you. Yeah, if you do good, look, if anybody hurts you, I'll come after them sevenfold. So, like, God's merciful. He's still merciful.
Yes.
Even if we say that if Cain is the actual offspring of Satan, God was still merciful to him.
Yes, he was.
But and people will say, well, God's not merciful to the Nephilim. And I think Danny Duvall said it the best. He says, wherever the spirit of man and a heart of repentance is, salvation is possible.
Yes.
The question is, will they have a heart of repentance? And historically speaking, they don't. But that doesn't mean they don't have a choice. Like, Mamre, Aner, and Eshcol was another turning point for me. I'm like, well, these guys are Amorite giants, and they were on Abraham's side.
Right.
Those that bless Abraham get blessed. I mean,
yes,
that's Genesis 12. So I'm going, well, maybe there's something going on there, but God said no more. Okay, this ain't happening no more. So then a law would have been laid down in Genesis 3, such that when they get to Genesis 6, some Jaza and associates knew that what they were about to do was a great sin.
Right.
So there had to have been at some point a decree made in heaven saying, hey, you can't do that.
Right.
And it makes the most sense in the context of post-Genesis 3, pre-Genesis 6.
And the fact that they deliberated and came together and spoke about it and then made a pact knowing that they were about to commit this grievous crime.
Yeah.
They knew that there was going to be severe judgment to their actions. And so, Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I also think that, if, because in the parable of the wheat and the tares, it says, let both grow together until the time of the end. And that if God would have just wiped out either Cain or Satan right off the bat, the tares wouldn't have had the free will to
Uh-huh.
decide over their lives what they were going to choose and they were going to serve. And so there was that reprieve of 7 generations for Cain and 7,000 years for Satan. And that was to establish the ground for everybody to have the free will choice to choose as they would. And then, at the time of the end, then the tares will be tares and the wheat would be wheat. And then when the harvest comes, then, that distinction can be made.
Wow, it's the end of the show. Oh man.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Wow.
It was a good one, brother.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right. Next week.
Next
God
week.
bless all. Good night.
Good night.
Shalom.
Good night, everybody.